G'day and welcome back for more Survival Impossible. I'm going to go right ahead and start grinding down the bits on the Splitsie that are going to be replaced, because I'm going to start working on this first thing, since I have a feeling I'm going to need this functional so that I can build that Arboretum, or at least lay down the basics of it. The main thing I want to try and get done with the Arboretum today is, well, to try and see if I can work out a way to encase those trees that looks okay, and then I'll figure out how I'm going to get underneath the ground to try and make them airtight. Because that's going to be the challenge, is digging underground and building the blocks to encase the trees entirely within blocks. Because unfortunately, as many of you would undoubtedly know, Space Engineer's voxels are not airtight. So I'm going to have to build blocks the whole way around, which means underneath and all sides, so that I can make it breathable for me, even though I imagine if I did that to a real tree, that would probably kill it. Well, a real tree that had evolved in this environment. But oh well, it doesn't happen here, so it's fine. My upgraded Splitsie is going to be very similar to the current one, except instead of the rotors that are lifting up the long piston chain here, it'll be hinges, which should allow me to get 3 hinges where I've only got 2 rotors. And also do so much more neatly, which I am very much looking forward to. So I've removed the antenna from the back end here because I'm going to be putting an advanced rotor down here. And advanced rotors are much taller than regular rotors when you place them down. If we... where is it? There it is. If I pop a standard rotor there and then an advanced rotor next to it, you can see just how much of a height difference there is. If I were to use the standard rotor, I'd still end up with everything up at the height of the advanced rotor in order for me to get multiple hinges working together, since I'd have to put a row of blocks across the top of this rotor. But if I can bring it down to a lower base, I think it'll just make the whole thing look better and function better. So I'm going to probably push this hinge chain further back, so maybe one block extra back, in order to try and fit the rotor down on that row there. So it'll probably be in about that position. I don't want to attach it directly to the hinge because that just gets a bit awkward. So what I've done to clear out some room for the antenna is removed the blocks that were in here. So now the antenna is going to go between the wheels. Because thankfully, 3x3 wheels, their suspension has attachment points on both sides, so I was able to get rid of that block without it all falling apart. And I wonder how many more times I'm going to move this antenna before I'm done here. Because I moved it toward the end of the last episode, I think. Probably should have made that face upwards, but oh well, it's down. It's done now. Detach. Let's move the whole thing forward a little bit. You may also notice that I have kind of changed how this was stuck to the base. I extended this line of blocks out here so that I can move the hinges further back. The idea behind that was to make sure that the Splitsie was centered, or approximately centered, underneath the camera rig, since I didn't want to miss out on seeing stuff that I was building as the time-lapse was going. So that was entirely for the time-lapse that I did that. There we go. Now I've got a bit of a nicer spot to put that rotor down. Still going to hang off the back a little bit more than I would like, but on compromise, I think it's the best option. I am aware that the center point of that rotor is now behind the rear axle. So, like before, I'm going to have to be careful about how far I allow that rotor to spin left and right, and especially how far I spin it left and right when this landing gear isn't locked down. But I don't think I can do much different on that, and I have been pretty good lately at remembering to lock this down before I did anything that I shouldn't do. So I feel somewhat safe. Let's give this a little bit of support just while I'm remembering to do it. Yeah, there we go. That looks a bit nicer. Cool. Now that I've got the advanced rotor, I can place these hinges down. I'm going to put 3 along the back edge like this. I want to put them as far back as possible because that should give me more room to put the pistons down. The joy of the triple hinge is that they do add extra torque to each other, so hopefully I will end up with a system that can lift a cage that's got a bit more mass to it, which means I can put things like a chair on there and whatnot. That's the hope anyway. So I'm going to have 3 hinges along the back like this. I've removed the hinge parts from these 2 because what I'll do is place a 2x1 base there, then a piston on that, so it's as close to the hinges as possible because I want them to start as close as possible, and then another 2x1 base on the other side. On the back of the piston and that second 2x1 base, I can put a hinge part so that this will attach to those other hinges. I can get in there. Doesn't want to like me. I think I'm going to have to weld up this hinge first before it'll let that happen. Oh. Well, that would explain why that didn't work. I didn't actually have the piston attached to the bit that I thought I had it attached to. Oops. So, again, piston part attached to the 2x1 base, not just to the rotor part that's underneath it. Another 2x1 base there, and then I can place my hinge parts under there and attach them. There we go. I'm going to turn off these 2 so that I can just control stuff for the time being with 1, because it's easier with build vision until I've set up the controls properly. Look it down most of the way, but not all the way. So before I had 5 pistons, I think I'm going to be stuck with the same number, even though I feel like I pushed this further back. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Yeah, because I'm also going to need to do this. We need to add this at this end because, again, the cage is going to be so heavy this time that I think I need a double hinge at this end as well. I can't just have the extra hinge power at one end. I don't need the triple because the weight of these pistons isn't going to be carried on these ones, but I still think I need more than just a single one. I'll link these up with these slab bits. So for the cage, what I'm thinking is using these as a bit of a support structure, and then using the window blocks as the remainder of the structure for the cage. I don't want to bring this down to the ground like I had before, because that created issues when I was driving around, and that I was always having to lift it up just a little bit to move around, which was kind of annoying. So if I can avoid that this time, that would be better. And I think the best way for me to avoid that would be to just make it not quite so low down. Like that. If I bring this down to ground height now, or I bring this down to its lowest point. Yeah, I think that works. I also want to make this wide enough that I can fit a chair on it, because this time I want a chair. I didn't put a chair on this last time, but I think it's worth doing, because I think I can get away with it this time. Last time I didn't do it because I didn't think I had the strength in the hinges to be able to get away with it, which means I want to have this another block wider. Yeah, that's how wide I want it. It needs to be that wide so that I can put these along the back edge on either side. And then these blocks up here to that height. That should give me enough room because the buttons will take up that block, and then these 3 blocks are available for a chair to be mounted, which is going to be a very big upgrade compared to the previous design, since chairs can hold oxygen bottles and can charge me and can hold food. So I could actually put enough stuff on the Splitsie that I wouldn't have to rush back to my base all the time whenever I'm running low. I can feel a bit more safe when I'm up there. Although me feeling safe somewhere might not be the best thing for me sometimes, because it means I take too many chances. How much wider do I want that? Is that wide enough? Maybe one more. So that'll be the rough shape of the cage, I think. Got some railings around it. I've got enough room for a chair. I've got enough room for all the buttons. Should work. And then if I go grab some girders, I can place in the glass so I've got a floor there too. I was thinking, instead of going with the 1x1s, this time I might use the 1x2 windows. Since I've made enough room to use them, and it just creates a bit of a different pattern. I don't know where I just placed a block. This is wobbling while I'm standing on it. Alright, chair. Regular old passenger seats, what I'm planning. maybe having it oriented that way makes the most sense, since then I should just be able to walk in front of it, even with the buttons against that panel. Whereas if I had it sideways, it might be a bit awkward and get in the way a little bit. That should be alright there. Then we need to have how many buttons? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I think 7's going to be nicer. That way I can have an extend and a retract for the pistons, while I just have a reverse and an on-off for the hinges. I had been thinking about applying the script to this build as well, but with the way I've got things set up with the buttons, that doesn't really play nice with any script controls. So much as I think the script controls are nicer, I really like the fact that I can walk around on this while controlling it. There's something nice about that. Similar to my tram in survival, maybe. It's just kind of cool and a bit more immersive in a way that I really do like. That's why I've decided to stick with the button control. The button control should be much better now because I can look the direction I want to look while controlling it. And so that's going to be a big step in the right direction anyway. There we go, we've got a chair. Let's do this before I forget and pop a couple of oxygen bottles in there. That is possibly going to be a problem, that thrush. Now, I've learned something recently, which is apparently Rival AI, the way I've got it set up with the assertive cargo ships mod, will target me regardless. So if I'm inside the building will get shot up. I don't want that to happen. And this is definitely going to spawn a drone. Right. So I think I'm going to have to come up with some sort of bus shelter design until I work out how to change the targeting setup for my drones. Oh yep, here we go. It's going to spawn something soon. A few people have asked about the range that the drones are spawning at. I am going to change that. It's not always going to be set to 1500 meters. It's going to be something semi-randomized in the future. I just haven't got the systems to do that as yet. But it will happen, so that it's a bit more interesting and a bit less predictable. I really hope I don't get shot. Ho 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 ho. Goodbye. Well, that one blew up. Maybe I just got unlucky with the other ones. I like to live life on the edge, putting myself in the line of fire. Okay. Back to what I was doing, because I just got completely distracted. I am going to design a gate for this. And I'm not sure how to approach that. Thinking maybe lose that and that. Put a full block there with a hinge on top of it. Could be the simplest approach. Just worry that a hinge here is going to leave the whole thing looking unsupported. I do think it will. So I might have to also get rid of... Oops, didn't mean to place that. So I might do this instead. Put those there, then this block, then the hinge on top. Cool. Now, how many of these can I fit in here? I think I have to go to a half, so this will be able to slide out because of the angles it'll create. And then put my little slab in here. Yeah, this works. So by bringing this bit of armor out as far as it is on the other side, I can actually get rid of that. And that should make it so that the gate can sit in neatly behind. Put another one of these. Yeah. Oh, I love the things I can do because of the collision. It's being changed. This would not have worked before. So if I hit reverse, it'll go up, down, and it looks very neat when it's in place. And all I need are a few buttons so that I can just hit a button to do this instead. Cool. So button, open, up on, up on. Then I need another button on the inside. Where shall I put that? Really wish I'd moved that hinge one block over. And I could have put a button on this side the same as I've done on the other. Do I have to put another button over here and then make the end button the gate? Don't really like that. No! I don't like any of the solutions that are coming to mind. I mean, I technically probably could put it on the gate if I made that a full block. That would probably work. Though it might clip against that block there. Why? Oh, that doesn't look as neat as I was wanting it to, but it kind of works okay, I think. I suppose with the chair at one end and this gate button at the other, it's fine. Still, I now have a safety gate. Now, the only time I'm going to fall out of this is if I clang or jump. And we all know that those are both real possible outcomes. Cool. So other than setting up the controls, the Splitsie is done. Splitsie has 23.7% charge on the 2 batteries, which is okay, acceptable. It's not great. I've painted a little bit of the stuff around here. I feel like I'm going to be open to some suggestions on ways to improve it, because I do like the I do like the red and white. The red and right, I think I was about to say. I do like the red and white colouring, but I'm not completely sure I've got the right bits coloured with the right colours to make it look as best as it can. But everything does work. We can close our gate. We can turn our hinges on, reverse them, and we go up, staying nice and level as before. Turn them off. I can then extend my pistons, retract them, turn them off when I want to stop them, and the red buttons are my on-offs for the 2 controls. So then for my swivel, I can turn it on and spin around, rotate back, turn off, and it all just works. This should work out much easier to control thanks to the controls being visible while forward facing. And I think the gate's a nice touch. Just for yet another mobile block and another subgrid. But that's the Splitsie. The Splitsie's done. I've named every single block on it too. So when I detach it, or reattach it, I should be able to control it nice and easily. I am tempted to leave this hooked up just for a little bit while I head off to grab I think Manny, actually. I'll go grab Manny so that I can shine some light on what I'm doing next, which is starting work on the Arboretum. Why did I go in here? Oh, that's right, water. Where did I put the water? Did I dump the water in here? I did. Sit down on my nom's couch, get myself up to 125. Do like Steve sitting on the couch there. Right. How close are we to dawn? We are a long way off from sunrise. Oh, actually, it's probably not too far off. Still, I think having some light from Manny could be helpful. Plus, I can also use Manny to carry down some bits and pieces to help me build the start of the Arboretum, because I'm going to need some steel plates, some interior wall plates, that sort of stuff. Interior wall plates? Interior plates. Come on, Splitsie, get your head on. Ooh, so close to that tree. Ah, pole. Okay, might need to put lights on more of the poles. Okay, Manny is loaded up. There's the tree just down there. I'll park it a little ways off just so that the spotlights spread far enough to actually light up more of what I want to see. So if I stop just here, I haven't quite lit up all the tree. There we go. That's about right. Now, I had hoped to come up with some sort of logical, sensible approach to how I was going to encase this tree in a glass dome, something that would look really awesome. But I haven't really come up with a great idea of how to make it work. The trouble I've got is this is a really steep slope, and I'm not sure how that's going to work with a building that I'm going to be walking out of into this space that'll be pressurized. I kind of, in my head originally, had the idea of a building on each side of a glass kind of archway going over the top, because that'll be really easy to keep encased and a lot less likely to get shot. But I worry that with the scale of the trees, that's going to end up really big. I am going to go for that anyway, but it does just make me a little bit nervous. I almost think it could be nice to line up with the 2 trees, but I actually feel like doing something a little less organized would be better. I'm almost certainly going to knock down this tree because it's going to get in the way, but we'll see. It may not become necessary. I want to be far enough out that these leaves have a bit of clearance before the wall, so let's start here. Why not? Just start laying some things out and see what happens. I'm going to grind this thing down by hand because I fear if I go anywhere near that with Manny, I'm going to knock down this tree because it is very, very close. And I just don't want to risk it. This tree is too important to me for making this build work. Is that going to be lining up okay? Mostly. I was thinking of this building being the residential building as well. But this kind of brings up a topic that I've thought about quite a bit, which is hangar design. Weirdly. But hear me out. The reason this brings up the topic of hangar design is when you're building something like this, where you've got to create a large open space, you're kind of stuck with making a building or a ship to the scale of that open space. If you're wanting to build a mothership and you design the hangar first, and the hangar is this huge, gaping, amazing looking space for all these ships, it kind of feels ridiculous if all you've got is a little shell around the outside of it. You kind of feel like you've got to add a whole bunch of extra rooms and facilities beyond that. But if you make the hangar too big, filling those rooms, especially in Space Engineers, becomes the biggest challenge in the whole build, really. The number of times I've built something large like that and kind of run out of ideas of what to do in all of the rooms. It's why you have to imagine a giant crew in it so that you can build accommodation spaces, I guess. Because otherwise, what else do you do with that space? I think this is going to be quite a nice volume, though. And so the reason that fits with this is I'm also going to have to make this space quite large. I have to make this big enough. Oh, that's too close. I have to make this big enough to fit the trees in. Ooh, unless the glass goes up from here on the outside wall. So I have to make this big enough to fit the trees in, which then dictates how big this living quarters building is going to be, and whether I'm going to have to think about other things to build in this facility. And that's what made me start thinking that maybe this should be where I build the daily needs stuff, since I really am not going to need this large a space. Oh man, this is such a big space. This is just, what am I going to do with all the building around it? I don't know. This was something I desperately wanted to do, so it's not something I'm going to walk away from. I've just got to sit here and think. What can I build around here, and how can I build my way of getting into this space as well? Maybe I'll start with that. Whenever I start to run out of ideas and feel a bit lost, I just go to something that I know I need to have. So I don't need to have an airlock in here because this is going to be airtight, but I would like a door. So what if we start with a door here? Got doors, there we are. As you can see, the sun is now high in the sky, and you'll notice in the time-lapse that I built all this stuff. I'm editing out that part of the video because I kind of just waffled and eventually came to a realization that I'd done it all wrong. So I'm going to get rid of this stuff, start fresh with a new plan, one that should work for what I need. The reason this one doesn't work is, for this Arboretum, what I need are 2 walls that go up to at least the top of the tree. I need those 2 walls because the glass for the Arboretum is going to be an archway. It's going to start all the way down here, off these blocks across here, which have got some hopefully greeble design that won't lose me air tightness. And then it'll go up, it'll then angle, flat, angle, and then down to this one on this side. So what I need is something on either wall that's tall enough to make that work. And what I'd started doing, which I don't believe works, was trying to come up with a sort of terraced design to follow the curve or the slope of this hill that we're on. Only trouble was, the terrace design did not get tall enough for those trees. So instead of that, what I'm going to do is build a tower. And that tower will have multiple floors to it, which also gives me an excuse to build an elevator. So I can build another vanilla elevator design that will hopefully be small enough to work in that environment and allow me to get to the different floors where I'll put some apartments in. I'll put like a cafeteria area, and then similarly on the other side I'll build a tall building to about the same height, and in it is going to be all of the daily needs stuff, all of the hydroponics, all of the food growing stuff that I can think of, and probably also separated by floors. Running underneath the building will be all of the blocks that I need to make this space airtight. Hopefully this will all end up looking a lot better than what I had in mind when I started setting up all this stuff. It's time to waste a whole lot of materials and grind it all down. Yay! Well, that's the trouble with designing in survival when you've got scrap on. Kinda have to deal with the fact that sometimes you're gonna throw away some resources. Just makes me glad that the lawn chair has a huge amount of iron. In fact, there's still tons and tons and tons of iron laying around on the ground in all the ore drop pods, including the one that's in the middle of the Arboretum. Right, so I need to have a doorway that leads onto the Arboretum, and this does seem like a good spot for one. So let's make that the ground floor. That's going to be the lowest floor in this structure. Lay out flooring to the extent that it'll go. And I might even cut this floor off at, say, this edge here, so I don't have to drill out the ground to make the floor bigger. Something like a full armor block over that to cover it up too. Now for the walls, how am I going to do these? That could work. I do half blocks across, then full, then half again. The idea being that this will then allow me to have half blocks on the next layer up. So across this front edge, where the floor is, I'll have full blocks. And then it'll be half blocks here, but it'll be half blocks made out of the, where are they? These window wall pieces. So where there's an actual floor, I'll use these. And where there's not, I'll use the half slabs. And that should work reasonably well. It'll also give me enough reason, I guess, to put those same window walls on the Arboretum side of stuff, which is what I want, since I don't really want to be in the Arboretum and looking back at just a big blank wall of steel. That's just sad and boring. I think what I'll probably end up doing as well is maybe even wrapping around something like this around the end of these pillars, just to make it a bit more interesting. I'll put it down here so that I don't forget about it, but there's every chance I'll hate this when I next come look at it. But something like that could add a bit of extra detail and a bit of extra interest around those pillars. Oh, I'll also have to think about it whether that's going to mess up the window design, because that may not work with how I have to do the windows. There's an issue. But that's floor one mostly down. So that'll be the airlock. Come in through here, go through the airlock, and then you're in the main ground floor. This doesn't need to be an airlock because that'll be airtight. That works. I wasn't really thinking this through properly. I should make this 2 levels high, as in 2 blocks in height, so then I've got room to put lights in. How will I make that work? Could just put another row of windows in, I guess. That might look okay. Or do I want to make all of these into vertical windows? It's 4 blocks. Could have 4 vertical windows. That could look nice. Yeah, let's do that. What's a little more wasted steel? Oh good, this is going to work out quite nicely. Given that I'm making the ground floor double thickness, I should only need to have 1 more floor. Which is a weird thing to say that's good, because that's obviously a lot of work for one floor, but if I have just one more floor, I won't have so much floor space that I'll kind of run out of things to do with it. I always worry with big builds like this how much space I'm going to end up creating, and if I'll actually have interesting stuff to do with it. Or if I'll run out of interesting stuff to do and end up just kind of filling it for the sake of filling it. It's a tough balance between the two, really. And I've certainly been guilty of building stuff large enough to just have to fill it in the past. Oh, thirsty. Should have filled that up when I went back last time. So I'm thinking if the door's over here, I might try and get the elevator into this area in the back here. If I start digging out space for the elevator there, what I'll end up having is a space to start the digging for all of the undermining of the Arboretum itself. I hope that'll work. Oh yeah, if this goes up to 2 blocks high, I'm sorted. So I might stick with my square design, actually. I hadn't intended to. I was going to make something a little bit more sleek, but given what I've got to do for the Arboretum, it kind of makes sense to stick with that squared off kind of feel that I've got with the rest of the buildings. There's going to be so much welding to do. Oh man. This is going to take so long. Okay, how do I want to do this? Do I follow the pattern of the previous floor? I feel like I might have to. I'm going to need to go up to one more. Actually, that is... Jeez, I need to make this thing super tall to make this work. I always underestimate just how tall trees are. Yeah, this is only just barely going to contain the tree if I have the walls up at this height. It's crazy. Ooh. I'm going to need to use a lot of scaffolding for this, I think. I don't reckon the lift is going to be all that useful for getting to the tops of these bits. Should still allow me to get through most of it, though, I think. Ow. Didn't think I'd hurt myself falling from that height. Whoops. I should have known better, because that's the same height as in the garage where I hurt myself. There. Ooh. I was not expecting to fall down then. Probably should have been looking where I was walking. I think this should give you guys a bit of a rough idea of what I'm imagining with this building, now that I've laid out this much of it. And that was kind of my goal for today, was to lay out a bit of the design, enough of the design that you can get a feel for what I've got in my head, so that then you can make any suggestions you like about how I could improve it. Because if I didn't get enough of it down, I felt like it would be really, really hard to articulate what it is that I've got in mind. So you can see this building's going to be quite tall, and it has to be. But I also think that I'll hopefully manage to get enough light into the space without straying too far from the architecture of the other buildings. It is a bit different, and it's obviously should expect to be. I do like these little bulgy out bits, and I'm going to try and put them on the other 2 floors above. But I won't put them on the inner edge. What I'll do is I'll put those on the outer edge of the building on the far side. So I think that should work out pretty well. I may not need to go elevator. I may be able to get away with stairs, but I kind of like the idea of maybe making an elevator in here. And I'll go with stairs over in the industrial side of things. But yeah, I think that's a promising start. I don't want to start doing any drilling because there's every chance someone will make a comment that'll make me just go, oh, hang on, that wasn't loud enough. There we go. That was a facepalm. It's hard enough to just go, oh, that's a much better idea than what I had in mind. And so I'd like to give you guys the chance to make me do that and hopefully come up with something even better than what I've got in mind before I go and weld all of this up, because this is going to use an enormous, absolutely enormous amount of steel. A lot of this is not going to be done in the rusted texture. I've just been placing with that, so don't stress about that, anyone who was. I think this building deserves to have a bit of a slicker coat of paint, at least in most areas. Some of it will still go rusty just to match, or to fit in with the stuff that's around here. Yeah, next time, I want to keep working on this. I think there's going to be a lot of welding and potentially a lot of drilling. something I might need to do before next time is jump into creative and make a 9 by... or is it 11? Hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So an 11 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. An 11 by 8 block kind of column. The reason I want to make that in creative or in another save is then I can make a blueprint of it and project it down into the ground. That should help with me mining out the space that I need so that I can enclose the trees from underneath with blocks, which is going to be necessary to make this space airtight. I have to build a complete floor, but I need to build it deep enough that I don't pop through the surface anywhere. And so I think having a projection may help with that and make it a bit more doable. That's all for next time. I'm actually kind of happy with how this building came together, and it's in some ways my first high-rise looking building that I've ever tried to make in Space Engineers. I don't usually go for this style, so it's going to be fun. Next time I will keep working on it. I will hopefully do some drilling underground and starting to work toward getting those trees in a breathable space for me. So there's all that and plenty more to come, and I will see you then.